Good afternoon, members. My name is Marcus James. I manage office and administrative services here at ACA, and I welcome you to this edition of the ACA member webinar series. As attendees, you're in listen-only mode, and that just means that we'd like you to please put your questions in the questions dialog box. There'll be a Q&A at the end, and we'll have our presenter answer the questions at that time. There's also a brief survey at the end, and we'd appreciate your feedback there. Our speaker today is Dan Murad. Dan is the CEO at ChemQuest, has over 40 years of specialty chemicals and materials experience with a strong background in polymer science. Dan's market and industry background in chemical intermediates, polymers, and formulated products industries includes, but is not limited to, CASE, home and industrial care, pharma, personal care, specialty cleaners, plastics and composites, lubricants, and more. Dan has been the CEO of ChemQuest since 1996. Sorry about that, Dan. Dan's experience includes strong international general management and leadership skills, a focus on profitable growth, strategic assessment, and value creation. He is a change management agent for critical decisions, team building, organizational and cultural management, and interpersonal communications. Dan has served on numerous ACA and other global industry organizations and committees, and is also an independent board director on 3 private company boards. With that, I'll hand this over to Dan. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Marcus, and it's a pleasure to be with you all today. The topic of my presentation today is to speak to you about the upcoming U.S. market analysis for the paints and coatings industry. And my intention is to basically walk you through the overall agenda that essentially starts with a brief introduction about ChemQuest, for those of you that don't know ChemQuest. And then I'm going to show you the makeup of the U.S. market analysis report and talk through the composition of that report and how it was gathered. And then I'll continue to move towards showing you some snippets from the report so you can get a real good understanding of what it contains. With that, relative to ChemQuest, ChemQuest is a specialty management consulting firm. Today, we are positioned where our practice is comprised of 4 different consulting practices under the ChemQuest Group umbrella. One is relative to business strategy and transformation. The second is around technology development, where we own and operate several of our own labs. The third is around manufacturing and operational efficiencies. And the fourth is around mergers and acquisitions, advisory services, both on the sell side in terms of preparing companies for sale, as well as on the buy side. Our clients often think of us as strategic thought partners and thought leaders because we have been able to compile over 130 deep bench of expertise, market expertise, chemistry, technology expertise, and a tremendous network of senior personnel from the commercial side, the manufacturing side, the technology side of the equation, whereby we leverage our experience, insight, and expertise to basically help our clients achieve their mission from the standpoint of building a strategy that challenges the organization to think outside the box, to helping them understand better ways to develop differentiated strategies and a competitive advantage, as well as valuing up their business for higher margin profile and sustainability of that margin longer term. Relative to the U.S. market analysis, first of all, we're very pleased to be working with the American Coatings Association to bring this report to you. The content was compiled via a number of different means, along with the analysis of those. Examples of that is pulling together secondary information, former published information by various sources, our own proprietary information, including the ChemQuest tracker forecasting dashboard and model that we have, pulling together statistics from various trade associations, including the American Coating Association, American Can Manufacturers, National Coil Coating, AMP, and the Powder Coating Institute, and a number of others. But more importantly, the primary information really was validated and pulled from extensive industry interviews that have taken place over the past year across the board, 360 degrees, end users, equipment manufacturers, distributors, coating formulators, and raw material suppliers. That really is the makeup of how we arrived at the update for this particular market analysis. The analysis really breaks down into well over 20 different market segments, spanning across architectural, special purpose, and OEM. 19 of those are in traditional segments, as we've got listed here, in terms of the way that you run your business as well. For the first time, we're actually doing deep dive granular analysis of the coil coating area, as well as the powder coating area, standalone chapters on those. And in addition to that, there are 4 other chapters that are included: new technology developments, raw material feedstocks and dynamics, a regulatory overview, and then global M&A activity. I want to make you aware that all purchasers of the US market analysis will qualify for a full day of virtual consulting with ChemQuest. And also for those subscribers to the US market analysis, they will get a discount if they also purchase the World Coating Council Global Market Analysis Report, which is due out this time next year. In terms of the content of the chapters, we have followed a very logical assessment of each of these market segments. So we start with a chapter scope, then we get into a market overview where we're talking an overview of the sector, and then analysis of the sector. And I'll show you some examples of this as I continue to roll through this presentation. Markets by end use, quantitative data, and then we'll start moving to the qualitative sense, talk about trends, drivers, discontinuity, major producers and estimated shares, economic and trade influences, and then an assessment for every single chapter of Porter's 5 forces, which basically is indicative of the overall profitability and profit sustainability of the business going forward. We then move into a technology overview, talk about the coating characteristics, the technology trends and drivers, and what's going on from the standpoint of R&D efforts relative to new technologies. And then we move into a forecast. It's a 5-year forecast. Within that, we talk about regulatory environment. We talk about the key buying factors, the quantitative data from 2023 through 2028, both from a volume and value perspective, as well as the compounded annual growth rates and price trends. And then the trends and drivers, and we finish each chapter with important takeaways. I'll now show you some snippets of information. So examples relative at the macro level of the US macro drivers. We talk a great deal about GDP. We talk about those economic drivers that impact each particular segment of the coatings industry. We look at things like the Institute of Supply Management, what's moving up, what's moving down, We're also looking at producer price index, producer manufacturing index. We look at purchasing managers index, and a significant number of economic indicators that essentially impact the overall coatings industry as well as individual segments of the coatings industry. Examples of those economic indicators would be multitudes of charts like these two particular ones. On the left-hand side, US capacity utilization for manufacturing, which is really an indicator towards industrial maintenance and some aspects of protective, as well as industrial production, which is really an indicator for OEM coatings. But we also have construction, both private construction as well as public construction, housing, permits, starts, as well as completions, the Harvard Remodeling Index. There's really multitude of economic indicators that are comprise this particular report, which is now well over 900 page report available to you. We also have a section that talks about reshoring and foreign direct investment, as demonstrated by this particular chart, in terms of the number of jobs that have been created and which sector they're created in, which is really indicative of coatings activity and coatings growth long term as these businesses reshore back to the US. In addition, we go into raw materials, and there's a separate chapter on raw materials. We start with showing you typical composition of those raw materials within a typical can of paint, if you would, as you could see on the left-hand side for architectural and on the right-hand side for industrial. But more importantly, we also go into an analysis of trends relative to what's happened to pricing at the feedstock level. So whether you're using urethanes or acrylates, whether you're using a vinyl acetate monomer-based material like vinyl acrylics, or whether you're looking at TiO2, you can look at them in aggregate, you can look at them individually, but as this chart demonstrates, and this is indexed to the start of 2020, just before COVID, this chart indicates the challenges that the industry has faced over the past 3 years in terms of the escalation and volatility of raw materials, which now are back down to normalized level, inflation adjusted, but normalized level to pre-COVID times. Relative to showing you some snippets from the US paint and coatings market overall, looking at certain aspects of it. So for example, consolidation. We show you a consolidation trend in terms of the number of acquisitions that have taken place by 5-year increments going all the way back to 1990. 2023 here demonstrated where it was a down year for acquisitions. Only 24 deals that were done from 2022 into the second quarter of 2023, as well as the value of those deals. And you know, primarily as you look at where consolidation has taken place globally, it is really concentrated very heavily in North America and Western Europe, where roughly 83% of the consolidation, because of the maturity of those regions, 83% of all M&A activity has taken place in those regions, with NAFTA slightly edging out Europe at 43% versus 40%. Multiples in 2023 went down by a couple of turns. And really, this started with demand slowdown in the fourth quarter of 2022. And when we started to take a look at trailing 12-month activity declining quarter over quarter and month over month, and then it was exacerbated even further when the Fed started raising interest rates. So the weighted average cost of capital went from 5.5% up to around 12.5, 13, and even more recently 13% for senior secured notes, and close to 14% for other mezzanine notes. But in essence, there's a bifurcation of this where the large scale companies, those that would, and here I'm describing large scale as companies that would have greater than $20 million of annual earnings, versus those that are small, medium enterprises. The small, medium enterprises are operating today in a range of, let's say, 5 to 8 times EBITDA margins. The larger ones are operating in the range of 10 to 12 EBITDA margins. But on average, we're at somewhere between 9.5 times. So these particular dynamics really have made M&A a down year overall in North America, in particular U.S., Canada, and Mexico. The expectation is that by the second half of this year, the TTM will start to show positive in terms of quarter over quarter and month over month, and that will start impacting the valuations. And with the Fed signaling that they intend to lower interest rates about 3 times this year, the anticipation is then the weighted average cost of capital will start coming down, and we'll begin to see activity. More recently, in the past 2 weeks, I've talked to a multitude of investment bankers, and I'm told that there are as many as 70 to 80 chemical deals that are waiting in the wings to come on stream in 2024. Once we see this balance in terms of cost of capital start to shift more towards the positive. Meanwhile, what we're seeing is that large corporations, the large global multinationals, across the board in terms of the overall value chain, are really still active in M&A. They are looking at ways in which they are reconfiguring their strategic focus and divesting non-strategic assets. They're also writing off inventory and making other working capital adjustments. Essentially, one fell swoop. I anticipate we're going to start seeing this in terms of Q4 results reporting, which is going to be starting here very shortly in the month of March and April. So from that facet, the anticipation is that consolidation is going to still continue because there are still well over 350 SMEs, if you would, that would be attractive for potential consolidation. The other aspect that we show, obviously, is we show architectural and the segmentation of architectural, both from a volume and value standpoint. We do the same thing for special purpose, and we do the same thing for OEM coatings. And then we get into the dynamics of the industry, the overall trends and drivers and discontinuities. We start with essentially demonstrating the 8 major drivers that we have historically kept track of relative to the impact on the coatings industry. The first being construction activity, which has a significant impact, along with what I showed earlier from the standpoint of durable goods manufacture. We look at the disposable income in developing countries because as lower income classes basically move up into middle class, that starts buying activity, and buying activity related to homes and the trickle-down effects from kitchen cabinetry, from appliances, from furniture, flooring, other aspects that then basically benefit from that, as well as cars, trailers, boats, and multitude of other things. So as the ascension gets into the middle class, we see a lot of activity that positively impacts the coatings industry. Regulations on environmental and safety standards is a must, and those of you on the call know as well as I do that since the 60s, regulations have been a big driver of innovation. Not always necessarily completely positive, because there's been a lot of reformulations, but they've definitely been a driver towards more environmentally friendly technologies, and we report on special chapter on the regulatory activity and the implications of that long term. Material substitution is another area. Market consolidation, as I showed an example of that. Safety, product safety, and this has been a big emergence, particularly since COVID. The impact with leads, the impact relative to antiviral, antimicrobial, low odor, low VOC content, and I can go on and on and on. Labor shortages, which is certainly at hand, and we're feeling that right now, as well as the movement of the industry from just-in-time inventory to what we refer to as just-in-case inventory, and impacted by reshoring and nearshoring the critical products, to not only avoid long time in terms of shipping as well as cost of shipping, but also to secure the supply chain and keep it closer to home for those critical products. For every chapter and every market segment, we will go through this type of an overview as you see here. And one thing I want to point out that's new in terms of the architectural chapter this time around is the inclusion of liquid building envelope coatings, which includes things like barrier coats, as well as above grade and below grade, as well as roof coatings, all of which were not in previous reports, but in this report it's been included in the architectural chapter. And of course, we go through and look at the historical growth, as well as future forecast in terms of volume and value, and an estimate of what that looks like long term. We also look at market trends, the key market trends and key technology trends that impact that particular market segment. Again, at an overview level, and then as we get into each particular market segment, we go through the same kind of analysis. Similar for OEM coatings. And as I mentioned, this time around, we have those dedicated chapters where we do deep dives into powder coatings as well as coil coatings. And the same thing is true for special purpose coatings, where it impacts marine, it impacts protective, offshore, refinish, as well as traffic markings. In terms of looking at the future, we have a substantial amount of time invested in this analysis relative to global macro trends that are really driving the development of new technology. From the standpoint of global health, from the standpoint of digitalization as well as digitization, mobility trends, sustainability and ESG, and change in climate. An example of that is looking at sustainability drivers from the standpoint of the circular economy, which is a very big drive in Europe that's finding its way across the ocean here in the US. Zero net carbon emissions, CO2 capture and recycle, as well as looking at ESG, the environmental, social, and governance programs that are really driving a number of facets today within the coatings industry. And then we also look at how technology substitution has been taking place in terms of waterborne, high solids, solvent-borne, powder technologies, and so forth. So this is an example of what you can expect to see. At the conclusion of each chapter, we talk about main takeaways. This is a takeaway here relative to the overall coatings industry in 2023. Yes, we've seen some very challenging times over the last 3 years. We've seen potential stagflation, the impact of the Ukraine-Russia war, labor shortages. We have a looming risk of recession ahead of us. We don't know whether it's going to be a soft landing or go into some sort of a recession. If it does go into a recession, our belief is that it's going to be mild, perhaps 2-3 quarters at the most. The industry has lived through relocating supply chains. We are embarking on a new age relative to Industry 4.0 and Industry 5.0. But overall, folks, the coatings industry has survived through all of this. We are a vibrant industry. We are an industry that can take pride in the fact that we continue to generate mid-teens return on investment capital. We generate stable, predictable cash flow, free cash flow conversion, 97, 98, 99%. Our margins are improving. We tend to build our margins on the back end of price increases. On the front end, we're playing catch up, and we may see some margin compression, but on the back end, we're able to normalize. It's an industry with low capital intensity, less than 0.5% of revenue in terms of invested capital. But it is an industry that's consolidating steadily. There are some pluses and minuses with consolidation. Technology and innovation continues to be very active. It's shifting from the traditional deliverables from coatings to asking for more functionality from coatings, and we see that across the board in every area in terms of architectural, OEM, or special purpose. The low cost in use and value in use of coatings today, where typically we are less than 2%, in most instances less than 1% in terms of cost in use and value in use, really give us pricing power overall. And from the standpoint of substitution, we don't see anything over the next 50 years that potentially are going to substitute coating technologies. So it's a vibrant industry. It's a sustainable industry. It's an industry that's going to demonstrate steady growth. Yes, we will see economic cycles as we've seen the last couple of years, but we have sticky, loyal customers, and we are definitely an industry with a sustainable future. We also look at an outlook from the standpoint of the supply chain recovery, normalizing margins, and what's going to happen with demand. Yes, we see some aspects of demand slowing down, others are improving. So at the moment, it's a mixed picture, but our belief really is that in the second half of 2024, the industry is going to come out of this, and we're going to enter what we refer to as the A cycle of growth, and move from A to B, essentially, where we're going into an accelerated growth period. The report itself is going to be available here shortly. As we speak, the ACA is going to be publishing it on its website for purchase and download by purchasers, interested purchasers. Non-member prices are $7,500. ACA member prices for an individual member is $3,200. For a corporate license is $10,000. And as you can see here, there are some additional benefits for corporate license members. One in particular that's rather significant is corporate license members will get access to all of the Excel data, as well as the growth forecast, both on the volume as well as value basis. And with that, thank you very much for participating, and I'm open for questions, Marcus.
All right, thanks, Dan. We're going to jump into the Q&A. All right, the first one. For trends, I did not see anything about artificial intelligence. Can you please comment?
Good question, and I'm not sure that that we've actually factored in artificial intelligence. I will tell you that artificial intelligence is something that we have built into our tracker model. You can look at AI forecast for the economic drivers. You can look at and it's forecasted at a 75% confidence level, along with the bands on the upside as well as the downside. It looks at historical aspects and builds that going into the future. So we have it for pricing. We have it for the economic indicators, and we also have it at the market segment level.
All right, thanks, Dan. And before we get into the next question, just want to let the audience know you can go ahead and enter your questions in the questions dialog box, and we'll get those answered for you. And the next one, how do I buy the report from ChemQuest or the ACA?
You can purchase the report from the ACA. It will be on their website. You'll be able to click on it, enter your payment method, and download the report.
All right, thanks, Dan. This report is for the US, but my business is global. Is there a report that covers the global industry?
There is. There is a World's Coating Council report that is going to be published approximately March of next year. And that one includes all of the major regions, and within the major regions, individual countries. So for example, North America, you'll see US, Canada, Mexico. For South America, you'll see all of the major economies, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, so on and so forth. For Europe, you'll see all of the Western European countries, as well as some Eastern European countries. We also have Middle East and Africa. And for Asia, we'll have certainly the Indian subcontinent, Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asian countries, China, Japan, Malaysia, Indonesia. All of those are going to be part of that report.
All right, thanks, Dan. What is your view on bio-based materials and use in coatings in the NA region? What is the driver for the switch?
Really, a couple of drivers from my point of view. The first is obviously ESG, and let me be clear about ESG compared to what historically we've talked about, environmentally friendly materials and you know, the drive towards regulatory drivers towards sustainability and so forth. What I see this time around, in all candor, is that investors are putting a lot of pressure. End users and investors are putting a lot of pressure on large companies to really take action relative to ESG. So it's no longer a market push environment, it's a market pull environment. And to me, that call to action is being answered. From bio-based materials, what we're seeing is a great deal of activity where, number one, the technology is improving. We're seeing the technology at equal performance, and we're also starting to see the cost associated with those to become close to par with what we're accustomed to historically. Compared to in the past, performance wasn't quite there and it was more costly. So there was apprehension in moving. The other aspect is the net carbon zero effect. And from that standpoint, I think that's a big driver as well. And then finally, the overall impact on ESG at a high level.
All right, thanks, Dan. And I just want to mention before we hop to the next question.
Sorry, Marcus, I apologize. There was one other point I wanted to make relative to bio-based.
Oh, sure. Yep, go ahead.
The other one, this is also important. The other aspect to me that's important this time around compared to the past. In the past, what we saw were end users saying to us, unless the entire system is biodegradable, or unless the entire system is sustainable, we're not interested in individual components. Today, what we're hearing is an entirely different story. Today, we're hearing, hey, if we can get 15% bio-based content and over the years evolve to 50, 60, 70% bio-based content, we demonstrate that evolution in a positive sense. That's important. And so that dynamic has also really started to create demand for more bio-based material. I'll turn it over to you, Marcus. I wanted to make that point.
Oh, yep, no worries. Thanks, Dan. Just also wanted to mention that the old iteration of the global market analysis is also available for purchase, though the new report will be out in a year from now. And next week, ACA will send a notice out that purchase is available, and you can go to paint.org/USMA. And the next question we have, I'm not sure the report will cover the sectors related to my business. Am I able to get a copy of the table of contents before I decide to buy?
Yes, absolutely. Be happy to send you the table of contents.
Yep, okay. And while we wait for other questions to come in, I will update the audience on a couple of webinars we have coming up. The next one will be on May the 5th. This will be a state affairs update for those of you who are not familiar with these. We have our lobbyists out in the States who are on the ground working for all of the issues important to you. And next week we will have our lobbyists from Maryland, Ohio, Texas, and Vermont, and that'll be on May 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And then on May the 7th, we will have an overview of environmental product declarations. This will be presented by SCS Global Services. They are a leader in third-party environmental, sustainability, auditing, and standards development. Let me get back to the questions box here. Hold on just a moment. Okay. And so we don't have any more questions at the moment. And so I think we're going to go ahead and we'll wrap up just a little bit early. But we want to thank Dan once again for spending this time with our members this afternoon. And slides from this presentation will be distributed this afternoon in a PDF form. And the recording will be available soon on paint.org in the Member Center. You will need your username and password to access that recording. And we'll close out here and look forward to seeing you all on the next webinar. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Marcus.
All right, thanks, Dan. Mm-hmm.